Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday morning check-in. I have been sitting the last couple of days thinking about a lot of things, as usual. I feel like I start out all of the talks with how there's a lot in my head and how I'm going to pull those threads together. So today is no different. And thank you so much for all of the good mornings. It's really nice to see them pop up on my screen. I have been doing a lot of reading. You know, one of the things that I have learned about myself over the last couple of years, really the last year or so, is I have a love of learning, but beyond that or underneath that, what is really a strength of mine or something that I hold even tighter than loving to learn about things is integration. I love bringing things together. I love taking pieces of brilliance that people have out here and bringing those threads together, weaving them together. That is an absolute passion of mine. And so as I am reading all of this amazing material that we have access to out there, these amazing teachers and authors, and about great topics like emotional intelligence and resiliency, and I came across a relatively new term of emotional maturity, and actually it was the opposite that I encountered. I'm reading a book about emotional immaturity, which got me thinking about what do people define as emotional maturity? Let's look at that, because that seems really interesting to me. And how does that correlate or fit with the things that we've been talking about, the things that we've been dropping in, learning more about for ourselves? And is there room for expansion here? Are there other things that we could be bringing in that would be helpful for us in this path of growth that we're all on? And I found some interesting things that I want to share with you today. First, I want to say that I think it's a lot easier to define emotional immaturity, right? This is a lot of us. And again, when I'm speaking about this, everything is on a spectrum, right? So we can all flow in between immaturity and maturity on any level at any given time, any given day, right? This is a muscle that we're constantly working. Maturity doesn't just happen in general. It's something that with experience, and this is the part that's really important, that I think distinguishes emotional maturity from immaturity, or from emotional maturity from emotional intelligence. Maturity requires experience. And what do we do? How do we integrate that experience? How do we let it shape us in a way that helps us then grow from it? That really is, in essence, a wonderful definition of maturity. And intelligence, emotional intelligence, right? Even just the word intelligence really denotes that focus that we really do have as a culture of over-relying on our minds and analyzing and understanding at that rational intellectual level, which is important. Of course, it's really important, but the maturity comes from the experience of and the growth from that, and how we can integrate that understanding into our growth. So as I was reading about emotional immaturity, it got me thinking about emotional maturity. Let me circle back to that. And really how emotional maturity for me really means being centered in yourself, which is different than being self-centered. And I think that's a fascinating distinction. Being centered in yourself, meaning that as we move through the world, we're coming from the inside out. And self-centered really is taking the outside and bringing it in. And to further clarify, so being self-centered is we're really looking for external validation of our worth. So everything around us, our thoughts, ideas, actions, conversations will revolve exclusively around us to try to get that attention. We need that external attention and validation. We will try to get it. We can try to get it everywhere. We will manipulate. We will try to control in order to bring that inside to feed our sense of self-worth. Right? So that's being self-centered. Everything is about me, because I need that. I need everything around me to be about me, to know that I'm worthy. And that's, of course, at a very extreme side of the spectrum. And on the other side of the spectrum is being centered in self. And being centered in yourself, this is really everything that we've been working on. This means that our thoughts, our ideas, our actions come from within us. They're rooted in us. They're rooted in who we are, what our values are, really what our purpose is. So being centered in ourselves means that we include us, our needs, our values, and purpose, and move that out. And in doing so, we are more open and interested in the true reality of what is happening around us, or what is happening with other people's experience, because we don't take it to mean anything about who we are, what our value is, that we're rooted in that. So being centered in self, which I think is just a beautiful term to put into this path that we're all on in terms of growth. We want to be more centered in ourselves. And being careful not to confuse that with being self-centered. You can see they're actually, again, very different on opposite sides of the spectrum. And we fall at different points in the spectrum depending on what's going on with us, right? So again, as we're defining emotional maturity, it's having an awareness of where I am, how to course correct, learning how to deal with the circumstances, the hard things that we're facing around us, and coming from that inside out. I read, was reading just a blog, somebody who defined emotional maturity really having 3 elements, and I love this. They're 3 R's: responsibility, responsiveness, and resilience. And I love this because it absolutely, again, validates all of the things that we've been working on. A person's emotional maturity means that inside of us, that a responsibility, we can carry an awareness of appropriate responsibility. And I want to really clarify that. When I read responsibility, I want to define it as appropriate responsibility. It's having that discernment of what is mine, what do I own, and what is out of my control, or what isn't mine to carry or to own. This appropriate responsibility means that we have the ability to drop in, that we have the ability to think ahead, possible consequences to our actions. It means that we take others into consideration, but we don't abandon ourselves, right? We always hold that responsibility for ourselves. We don't abandon ourselves. We're part of the equation. knowing what's ours and what is not ours to carry in terms of emotions, circumstances. And this is something we're all constantly working on. This is a work in progress, I think, for most people, to not be over responsible in a lot of ways, to abandon ourselves and what we need to try to help someone else, or to take on the responsibility for their emotions, their processing, to help them through. It's also a way where we maybe have felt safe in the world to feel over responsible. If it's all my fault, and again, this is a very young part of us that can hold this belief, then at least I'm in control of that. I feel a little more control. If I'm the one messing up all the time, there's a false sense of control. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to make sense at that rational level, because these beliefs are rooted in us from a very young age. So taking a step back, and this is what we're going to drop in and check in with in a little bit, but just noticing our growth in terms of our own responsibility for ourselves and appropriate responsibility for others. And the second R that they talk about is responsiveness. And for me, this is a beautiful validation of really how we move through that inner revolution of the goal in the inner revolution is to create some space. So responsiveness really means that we have awareness of our triggers. We're aware of our emotions, that we have access to tools that help us to create a pause, create some space in between those triggers, those emotions that come from those wounds. So we can come from a place that isn't reactive. Maturity denotes being able to respond rather than being reactive, emotionally reactive. And again, this is part of our path. This is part of all of this hard work of constantly dropping in, asking ourselves those questions, being curious, being open. All of that work helps us to be less reactive in the world. And then when we are reactive, we're going back into that responsibility, the appropriate responsibility. I know that when I lose it, which absolutely happens, and it happens to all of us because we're human, when I am reactive, I can circle back and I can hold appropriate responsibility. I can own my peace in that. And there's such amazing power and healing that can happen when we go back for the repair and we can hold that responsibility for our peace in it. And then the third R that they talked about in terms of emotional maturity is resiliency. And I love this word, resiliency. This is really why this is the crux of the inner revolution as well, is to build emotional resiliency. And my definition of resiliency is that you're able to cope with change, whether it's expected or unexpected. And we learn to ride the waves of our emotions. We can find some sense of elevated perspective in the process, no matter how hard it is. And we have access to tools to help calm our nervous system. We can find those threads of hope or gratitude, even in the midst of the storms. So resiliency is not putting all of our chips in or banking on nothing bad will happen, because we are setting ourselves up for major failure when we do that. Resiliency is really that knowing and the experience of being able to hold on to ourselves in the midst of chaos, in the midst of change, in the midst of really hard circumstances. It's the knowing that we're going to be okay when things around us are not okay. And again, all of the work that we're doing helps us build that muscle of resiliency. So emotional maturity really at the crux means finding that strength in ourselves. It means knowing who we are. It means when we stray, when we're going into the other side of that spectrum, that we're aware of what's happening and we can course correct and we can always come back and we can learn and we can grow from that. That really is the definition of emotional maturity, which I love. So let's all just take a moment in the next few minutes and let's settle in and let's drop in and let's check in on our progress, because we haven't done this in quite a while. Really just sitting with and acknowledging what growth has occurred just in the last couple of months. And let's check in specifically around these elements of emotional maturity. So if you're game, find your seat. Find that comfortable position where your head, neck, and spine are in alignment and you feel supported and comfortable. And taking that first nice deep breath in, closing your eyes. Holding that breath for as long as you comfortably can. And on the exhale, feeling yourself dropping in. This familiar practice, this ritual. Another nice deep breath in, holding that breath. Even noticing here this shift, how quickly we can drop in compared to even just a couple months ago. On the exhale, feeling yourself sinking into your chair or whatever it is that you're sitting upon. Let's take one more nice deep breath in, holding that breath. And on the exhale, just feeling everything inside you, around you, start to slow, quiet, calm. Finding your own pacing, your own rhythm of your breath, where you're breathing both deeply and easily. Taking these next few moments for yourself. Taking this important time to drop in, to be curious, to be open, to acknowledge whatever is happening inside of you. Taking this moment to bring your attention to the support below you, feeling your feet on the floor or your sits bones on the surface that you're sitting upon. Maybe bringing your hands down, pushing them down, feeling that support below you, the groundedness, breathing into this. Taking a moment to breathe right into your heart center. Feeling your heart open, widen, and expand. Welcoming this breath of life. And on this next breath, breathing that air right into your heart And exhaling up and out the top of your head, and maybe even letting your hands reach up, stretching your head, neck, and spine. Up, 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 into the expansiveness, the openness, the grace that's above us and all around us. And continuing to breathe. I'd like for all of us to really just bring inside this word, responsibility. And see what happens inside of you. Responsibility, responsibility for yourself. Can you see, acknowledge any shifts in how you hold appropriate responsibility for yourself? And you notice any progress? Not perfection, progress. Are there more times where you're holding on to yourself, where you're not abandoning yourself? You're showing up for yourself. Just continuing to breathe and being curious of what comes to you when you pose these questions. And moving on to the next word, the next term of responsiveness. And you notice all of the ways where you're able to respond, the places where you've been able to create a little space in between an emotion or a trigger and the action. All of the times where you've been able to respond rather than react. Just acknowledging. Attuning to the progress. Celebrating every time that we're able to do this. And another nice deep breath in. Moving into the third term, the third word that defines emotional maturity, which is resiliency. This is a big one. Sitting with the acknowledgement, seeing over the last couple of months your own resiliency, all of the waves of emotions you've been able to ride. All of the times you've accessed your tools. Attuning to the progress, not the perfection. All of the times where you've been in the dark and you still are okay. In the midst of all of the uncertainty and all of the emotions that come, where you've been able to hold on to yourself. Again, offering gratitude acknowledgement. And for any of us that were perhaps bombarded with our lack of perfection, or all of the ways where we didn't show appropriate responsibility or responsiveness or resiliency, just offering ourselves oceans of grace, knowing that we are all works in progress. This is an ongoing work in progress, this being human. Breathing in, feeling your heart expand even more. And let's set this intention for today and throughout the rest of our week to bring this awareness, this conscious awareness of how we are building this muscle, this experience of emotional maturity into our lives. More and more and more. And slowly coming back into the room, opening your eyes, feeling grounded, expanded, heart open, curious, and also full of gratitude for the work that we have done. All right. You all, thank you so much for taking time and joining me this morning. It's good to see all of you with me, and I will see you again on Sunday morning.